was sitting in a congressional office for an Indiana representative in Washington, D.C., and I had just gotten off the phone with a very concerned man. He was talking to me about something about the weather changing. He said he was concerned because of the trees. Now, if I had been any other intern on Capitol Hill, I probably would have thought to myself, okay, another tree hugger, and then gone along with my day. Except I had also noticed that the ginkgo trees this year had shed their leaves without turning golden yellow like they usually do, and had been following the Indiana weather and noticed that the unusual weather that we gotten in Indiana was a little bit more unusual than normal. I made a mental note in my head for yet another person who cared about the environment but also happened to be from Indiana. In high school, I became keenly aware that everyone around me wanted to leave. My friends would say things like, "I can't wait to get out of this state," or "When I graduate, I'm getting as far away from here as possible." And they stuck to their word. Many of them went out of state for college. Others were so insistent on leaving that they left the country. And I had adopted the same mentality as them, only I decided to extend my stay a little bit longer, and so I came here to Indiana University. And in my mind, I knew all of this was temporary. I was a Hoosier because I grew up in Indiana, and now I was a Hoosier still because my school had a very original mascot. In the back of my mind, I knew that I was destined to be somewhere else. No one could convince me otherwise. Going to DC was kind of like mapping out my escape plan. I'd go there for a semester, fall in love with the city, and then return there after I graduated. I chose DC because I thought that's where everybody who cared went. Anybody with a fiery burning passion for some sort of policy issue went to the city where everything happened. I thought that if I wanted to make a difference, if I wanted to be somebody someday, I had to go to the nation's capital. So I did. Every single day on Capitol Hill brought a new sense of excitement. I was always bumping into somebody who I thought just might be famous, or stumbling into incredible events during my quest for free food. I was a college student still, after all. And my favorite part was meeting other Asian Americans and looking at the astonished look on their faces when I told them I was from Indiana, because they didn't know that Asian Americans lived in Indiana. And since I was interning for an Indiana representative, I came in contact with Hoosiers wherever I went. I was always engaging with them either over email, on the phones, or in person. And in the back of my head, I also couldn't shake this thought of Indiana. I'd go to a hearing about vaping or education and wanted to write a letter to my school board back home. Or I'd go to an event about environmental justice and think about all my classmates at IU who would have really enjoyed it as well. One afternoon, I was sitting in a meeting with a bunch of high school students from Indianapolis when one of them asked me what they could do to give back to their community. I thought for a little bit and came up with something along the lines of, vote when you're old enough, talk to people even if you disagree with them, sometimes they might be your parents, and also threw in a reassuring, oh, high school doesn't last forever. They were so eager to make a change and give back to the communities they came from, the very communities that I wanted to leave behind. Meeting with these students made me realize that I had a lot to reflect on about why I cared about the same issues that they cared about the environment and education. I realized I cared about these issues because I love people who are impacted by them. My community taught me how to be passionate, and I was so focused on leaving that I hadn't thought about giving back. Instead of having conversations with people, I had just assumed that they didn't care. And as somebody who thought they knew everything about Indiana, I now realize there's a lot more for me to learn. There's so much more to discover, and I realized that telling people that Indiana is nothing but cornfields or just a state that people drive through is really discrediting all the history that's come before me. I thought that going to DC would help me chase some sort of sense of belonging, find a new home. But I realized that the people there, although passionate, didn't feel like home. I thought that leaving Indiana would solidify my decision to return to DC after I graduated, but instead, it made me grow more fond of this place. And after leaving, I finally realized that the people who care the most aren't the ones who decide to leave, they're the ones who choose to stay. Thank you.